Um, Let me just open up with a quick question. What do you see as some of the greatest leadership challenges that uh, your students face? What are their leadership challenges? You can speak up.
I teach the first year seminar course, and the school that I teach at, it could be anyone from 17 to 70. And what I've noticed from the quote unquote traditional age 17, 18, 19-year-old is being proactive and serving as your own advocate, voicing your interests and concerns.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I'll agree with that. But yeah, excellent. Anybody else? Leadership challenges that our students face?
I think it's difficult for these students today to be leaders in that they can barely lead themselves. They need to have somebody tell them what to do. They need to have somebody hold their hand for everything that they do.
I should have hired you. It would appear that I had hired you. So on that, okay, and I will agree with you. It seems that some of them have difficulty, many students have difficulty just leading themselves, right? So how are they going to lead other people? And so that's what we've addressed. And let me tell you a little bit about this. I teach a course called Business Leadership 101. All right. And actually I created the course. And how come? Oh, there we go. Okay. So it came about, you don't have to read through all this, but it came about through guided pathways. And I'm sure you're all familiar with guided pathways, the notion of keeping students on a pathway, having lots of support along the way, and getting them from point A to graduation, from the point of entry to graduation with a credential, and sort of putting blinders on them so that they don't end up taking courses that are not related to their degree, figuring out early what they want to major in. Not too many students, hanging out with that, oh, I'm undecided. So guided pathways, but this came about from the guided pathways approach. And there was this notion that we needed these courses that were going to be for first year students. There were three important design principles that were are part of how this was created. They were looking at the entire student experience. Guided Pathways is the framework that unifies a variety of reform elements, so it puts them all together, right, and tries to get to the students from those goals and even to employment and to figuring out where they're going to go next. And it starts with the end in mind. So what is the end goal for the students? Where are they going to be? What kind of career will they have? Where will they transfer to? And that, of course, comes from the AAC. So we introduced these first year courses. And the first course that was introduced at Community College of Philadelphia was something called FYE, First Year Experience. And this was for those liberal studies students, all right? And here they had this great emphasis as they had, because they've had courses that were first year experience courses for students in the past. They were usually just one credit and they were, focused on study skills. So this was an expansion of that for many, for students in liberal studies. There was this emphasis on reading comprehension. So students would read an article and then answer questions about the article. Writing, study skills, academic success. They had to come up with 3 plans: a career and transfer plan, an academic plan, and a financial plan. And so as an example for the kinds of questions students would be asked is they would be given a reading assignment and then asked, what does the author say are the 3 most likely reasons why college students don't get enough sleep? They would read this article about college students not getting enough sleep, and the student would have to do this typical SAT reading comprehension type of exercise. So business leadership came a year later. And it was designed specifically for business students. That includes accounting students, business leadership students, and now we have fashion merchandising. But students who are majoring in business take it within their first 12 credits. The emphasis for this course was a bit different. The emphasis was on leadership, business careers, professionalism, and academic success. It was not focused on reading comprehension, writing, study skills, etc. There were the 3 plans, and that's universal. We also have a similar course, I should say, also a first year experience course for health studies majors. I'm not going to say it's similar because actually that one is quite different as well. And in that one, also, they have these 3 plans. So across the board, all of our first year courses have these 3 plans: career transfer plans, academic, and financial. So that's sort of the unifying element that we all have. In Business Leadership 101, some people call it BIZL 101, BUSL 101, we also have a team project. And that's really important because of some of that leadership stuff. And we'll talk about that. So here, students might actually read I'm sorry, let me just say this. If you take a look at my last bullet here, students might do some reading and ask, how would you handle a situation where a fellow student on a team project was not contributing adequately? So you see the difference in the kind of question. One is like a reading comprehension question, and the other one is more of a thought question about how you would handle this kind of personal interaction. So more focused on relationships and leadership and how you manage yourself. Well, we needed to choose a leadership model. And for those of you who are familiar with business or management or leadership models, you know that they abound. There's dozens of leadership models out there. There are so many to choose from. We could have gone with trait theory, contingency theory, process leadership, transactional theory, transformational, situational leadership, right? All these different leadership theories. But the problem with many of these models for leadership is that there's an assumption built into the model that you are already a leader, and that as a leader, you have people who are already following you, that you've already have this positional power, that you're already a manager, that you're already running a company, that you're already Gandhi, okay, that you already have followers. And the truth is, for most of our students, they don't have that sort of positional power. Some of them do. I mean, and we try to find that positional power that they might have. Some of them are older siblings. They may have nieces or nephews. Some are parents, of course. Many of them are supervisors at their job, so they already have people who report to them. But many of them don't. On the other hand, they may have people who they train because they're experienced in their job and new people come in. They may have people who just look up to them for one reason or another because of the work they do. Maybe they do volunteer work. Maybe they're involved in a club or a community. They may be on sports teams, and we try to identify. But we like to make it, but we don't want to start here at this Gandhi level of leadership because it's too far detached for many students. They can't relate to it. They're not running a corporation. They're not running a nation. And I want my students to learn to lead themselves and others in the real world, in the world that they're in right now. Okay? So I thought about the outcomes that we wanted to achieve. What are some of those? We wanted the self-reliance, as those of you who talked earlier described. We want them to have good emotional intelligence. We want them to have an ability to build meaningful and effective relationships. We want them to be prepared for the workforce. We want them to be able to influence and lead others however they may be doing it, whether it is their own children, whether it is their siblings, nieces, nephews, whether it is people who they encounter at work. And we also want them to be able to help themselves by exploring careers, by understanding what it is that they want to do with their life. We want them to take control of those plans and not just have those plans just be a meaningless assignment. Any questions so far, by the way? No? Okay. So we found this model. Now, if you've never heard of integrative leadership, that's fine because most people, I had never heard of it. A lot of people have never heard of it. We found it only in one paper, which came out of the medical field. And it discussed a way of working in leadership with patients and with caregivers and across disciplines in medicine. So you would say, well, what the heck does this have to do with first-year students at a community college learning leadership? And yet, reading through this article, which really was intended for doctors, we found a terrific model, and we decided to take off and use it, even though it was not intended for college students. It begins right here in the center. If you look at the bullseye, and what it begins with is self-leadership. And because so few models actually begin with self-leadership, this was really special. And what it talks about, by the way, at the top, when you see that list of sustained transformation, organizational evolution, etc., those are the goals for each of the circles, for each of the rings in the bullseye. So for example, for self-leadership, the goal here is to have informed mindfulness. And by informed mindfulness, we mean understanding yourself, knowing, being mindful of how you're behaving, being mindful of what your prejudices are, of what your triggers are, being mindful of what your goals are, what you need to do, what you're trying to accomplish in life. Relationships with others, that's actually about relationships one-on-one with others. And there it's about developing these insightful functional relationships. And a relationship is insightful and functional when I understand who you are and what's important to you, when I'm able to talk to you by appealing to things that are meaningful to you, by speaking to you in a way that you'll understand, by being empathetic, by being compassionate, by spending time listening to you. We talk about teams at that third level. And so for teams, the goal is developing effective group dynamics. And there we talk about things like conflict management, working with others, people with different types of personalities, managing relationships with multiple people in a group. Then we spend less time in the outer two rings, and that's because those are those bigger leadership roles. There's institutions. So if you're an institutional leader, then you're running a company, perhaps. You're running a college, you're running a larger organization. And of course, the cultural part, that's the really big transformational part. And that's where you're changing cultures. And we do want students to be aware of that. And we're hoping that they will get there. We're hoping that they will one day be able to lead at that level. But for the most part, most of them are not quite there. They're not there yet. But we want them to see their leadership as a progression, starting with the self. So when it comes to the traits of an integrative leader, this comes right out of the integrative leadership model. We start off by talking about these self traits of a leader. There's integrity. And we spend a lot of time talking about what does that mean? What does that mean for you? How are you demonstrating integrity? And if you're a first-year college student, good integrity could be handing your assignments in on time. It's doing what you said you were going to do. It's doing what you agreed to do. If you were assigned to read the chapter, are you going to read the chapter? Do you have integrity? It's not just about being honest in your dealings with other people. It's being honest in your dealings with yourself. Being authentic, true to yourself. Courage, and many of our students, as you know, exhibit great courage in what they do and in coming to school, because they come through with great challenges. So we talk about the kind of courage that they have. Compassion and empathy, I tend to link those together because they are linked, but being able to put yourself into other people's shoes, being able to understand where other people are coming from, not jumping to conclusions, being humble, and of course, passionate, okay? You have to find passion. And we talk about finding passion even in those courses that you are required to take that you may not necessarily be passionate about, and about how you can find passion and how that may help you to lead. Of course, emotional intelligence is a fabulous model, and it's built into the integrative leadership model. And so we spend time talking about emotional intelligence. And students are given an opportunity even to judge others' emotional intelligence. I give students mini scenarios. We spend a lot of time with mini scenarios rather than long case studies. We give them these very small, short scenarios. You get a C on a paper that you worked hard on. Okay, you spent a lot of time working on a paper for an English class and you earned a C. What do you do? Okay, do you decide that the teacher is awful? Do you go see the teacher and demand a higher grade? Do you send them an email? I'm sure maybe you've received, one of these emails. I get them occasionally from students just saying, I don't like my grade, change it, or do something different, or why'd you give me that grade? And we talk about what are the emotionally intelligent approaches to these kinds of scenarios. Because many of them are in supervisory positions or one day will be. One of the most important lessons that students learn about emotional intelligence and leading and supervising is remaining neutral and never making personal attacks. If you are a supervisor and somebody shows up late for work 5 days in a row, rather than jumping at them and saying, well, you're lazy, you don't care about work, which we don't know. We don't know if somebody really is lazy because we don't know what they do when they're not at work. We don't know if they really don't care about work. We don't know a lot of things. But what we can say is you were late for work 5 times last week. And when students start to understand that not jumping to conclusions, not making judgments is an essential part of leadership, and instead just calling out the behavior and saying you were late for five days last week, we need to talk about that. What is going on and how is that going to be fixed, because I need you here on time, opens up conversations, and that this is what leaders do, and that this is demonstrating great emotional intelligence. It's, of course, being aware of your own emotion, keeping those in control. Many students don't know that because they're business students, but they very often come from families where nobody really has worked in a professional business environment. And all that they know about business is perhaps what they see on television. And I don't watch a lot of television, but I know that very often bosses or supervisors are depicted as people who rule with an iron fist, who just say, you're fired, do this. They do all kinds of things that would be considered rather outrageous in the real world if you watch on television. I hope you agree with me on that. But students believe that this is how people behave, and that this is okay, and that it's okay for people to behave in these ways, because they may not really have a good understanding of what's involved in a professional environment, including a professional school environment as well. So we want them to, be open-minded. We want them to listen to people here with empathy and resolve problems with win-win solutions. Any questions? Of course, we also talk about being aware of your situation, be aware of what's going on in the environment. Is the environment stressed? Is now a good time for certain kinds of actions? Look for people who support any kind of a change that you want to make, or people who support your opinion. Look for those pockets of resistance and figure out how you can work with them. Going back to this, by being aware of what would lead people to feel the way that they do. So if you're in a situation where somebody disagrees with you, how do you handle that situation? What are the economics? What are the mission and vision? What you're trying to accomplish? What do the opinion leaders say? And we put these into very, I'll say, very typical situations that students may find themselves in. Could be as simple as you got a D on an exam. What do you do? Do you drop the course? Do you not drop the course? What are the things that you can do to help yourself? Maybe you're having an argument with a parent. we put that kind of argument through this kind of analysis and try to show students that there are ways to lead themselves into a better situation, that there's ways to handle disagreements, ways to handle conflict, ways to achieve the goals that they want by using tools related to emotional intelligence and leadership. So I'll tell you a little bit about some of the assignments that we have. We teach the model for integrative leadership, so students do learn about that. They learn about academic and career professionalism. And students have told me over and over again that they found this to be the most helpful and the most eye-opening part of the class. We go through just professionalism and even professional etiquette. For example, a lot of students don't know that it's not okay to have a loud personal conversation on the phone in the middle of a hallway. They see other people doing that, and it seems typical and normal. And if you're having an argument with somebody, why not have it out then and there on the phone with students, with whoever it is that you're disagreeing with, right in front of everybody. Students tell me that they're shocked to find that just taking that argument into the bathroom is also not a good solution, is also not considered professional. They learn about just simple things, including phone etiquette, keeping your music low when you're out, not just being professional in your work environment, but being professional in every environment, and allowing that to define you. We go over, of course, dressing for success. Students are so surprised, even about some basics about dress for success. It's kind of surprising. And no, we don't teach that everybody has to wear a suit nowadays, because the vast majority of people don't wear suits. But students are very surprised by what they learn about academic and career professionalism, and everything that goes along with that. They explore careers. And this is important because, again, so many students come from families where nobody has worked in a professional capacity in a business. And so students only know of a few careers. They may have vague idea about what an accountant does, vague idea about what salespeople do, but they haven't heard about careers like, for example, you could be a purchasing manager. That's a good career. There's nothing wrong with that. But most students have never heard about those sorts of things. We teach academic success, but we don't teach it from the standpoint of study skills and the like. We teach it from the standpoint of getting yourself up in the morning and going to school. There's an excellent reading piece that we give them called the Theory of Halves. And the Theory of Halves essentially says that you have all these choices to make in the course of a day when it comes to going to being a student. You can choose whether or not to go to class. And it says sometimes half the students in a class will choose not to go. You can choose whether or not to be prepared. You can choose whether or not to participate. You can choose whether or not to sit up front. And many students also say that they find that fairly eye-opening. We talk about these success plans, where they work on their career transfer, academic and financial plans. Students do a snapshot presentation. In this presentation, they're given 3 to 5 minutes to talk about themselves. And they also they talk about their past educational experience, but they also talk about their leadership experience. And this is eye-opening for many students because they're forced to think about any time that they were a leader. And it's easy for students to say, well, I've never really led anything. But when we redefine that, down to the point where we say, hey, you know what? Every day that you get yourself up out of bed and you decide to make your bed or brush your teeth or get your tail to school on time, you're making a leadership decision, even if it is just self-leadership. The class culminates with a team project, and the team project is an interesting simulation. It's a simulation where students are put into an uncomfortable, I'll say an uncomfortable situation. We assign 6 students to a team, and those 6 students are required to come up with a either a 5-minute presentation for our live in-person classes, but now, of course, everything is online, and we always had an online section of this course, or they can come up with a brochure, and the brochure is 2 pages, 1 page, a 2nd page. It can fold, it doesn't have to fold, right? And what they're doing is they're going to write a brochure where they're going to be pitching, as business people do. You know what a pitch is, right? In sales, you pitch. So we link this to business this way. They have to pitch one of the services available through the college. So it could be the library, the learning lab, advising, counseling. And in preparing their presentation or their brochure, they're required to interview one full-time employee from the college who works in that area using appreciative inquiry. For those of you who know what appreciative inquiry is, that's a positive method for bringing about improvement, often used in business. So here's the real trick of this is that when you have 6 people trying to create a brochure, that's too many cooks in the kitchen, all right? So a 2-page brochure would take if one person was working on the brochure and they went through all the steps, and it's phased. They start off with a team charter where they assign roles, they come up with a plan, they come up with questions that they will ask the person they interview. They come up with an outline for the presentation or the brochure, and then finally they come up with a brochure. Then they have to think about what leadership skills they used as part of the team, and finally they write they do one thing individually, which is where they kind of debrief and think about how they participated on the team, what skills they used, and how everybody else participated on the team. It becomes for me, it's kind of fun to watch. Maybe that's a little sadistic, but because you do have too many students trying to accomplish too little, it invariably ends up with arguments if the individuals on the team don't adhere to what they've learned about leadership, including self-leadership, managing yourself, interacting with others one-on-one, or interacting with a group. So the best teams will get through this, and they'll get through it so quickly and so easily, and they will not understand why this could be a problem for some of the other teams. And some of the other teams, the ones where there may be people who are, still learning about those leadership skills, they will invariably end up with conflict that they're not resolving effectively. They will argue over things that don't count for anything. One of the things we ask is for them to come up with a team name. And I've seen teams spend 2 weeks arguing over what to name the team. The team name doesn't count for anything. It counts for no points. And so when we talk about leadership lessons, one of the things we talk about is choosing your battles, picking what you're willing to stick up for or argue over. And so students have to be reminded to go back and look at these leadership lessons to resolve some of these conflicts and ultimately finish the team project. And of course, we have a lot of in-class group exercises and group discussions, small groups. Very often students leave, I'll say almost always, virtually every student leaves this class with a friend, and hopefully it's one of their first friends who they've met at CCP. Many of them leave with a whole wide group of friends. So really it's about the self-leadership, and for self-leadership we talk about these topics on the left: mindfulness, knowing who you are, reserving judgment. Don't judge people. You don't know what's going on. Take everything in, listen, hear, be self-reliant, help yourself, as you mentioned, take responsibility, act like a professional, demonstrate that you're a professional. We do this right down to where in Canvas, students are required to post a photo of themselves. If they don't want to post a photo of themselves for some reason, they can post, a team logo or something. But most, of course, choose to post a photo of themselves. And they're required to post a professional photo of themselves. They don't have to be all dressed up. You can be wearing a t-shirt. You have to be wearing clothes, because I've had students who, when I used to just say, could you post a photo of yourself? Students would post photos of themselves scantily clad. They'd post photos of themselves that looked more like they were, photos for Tinder. Students with their tongues hanging out, students with those, cat ears, or the cat noses and stuff like that. And no, instead they have to create a profile that looks a little bit like more like a LinkedIn profile than, like I said, than a Tinder profile. We look for evidence. So we have assignments that focus on self-awareness, strengths, challenges, your preferences. They're required to submit things on time. If you don't submit things on time, you're kind of shut out. They have to find resources for themselves around campus. They have to hand in quality work. There's multiple assignments given every week. And they have to make plans based upon what their goals are. Then we move to relationships with others. Those are those one-on-one relationships, like I said. So students decide how they want to be perceived. They're forced to build a relationship both with me, with other instructors, with other students. We talk about the relationships that they have with their supervisors if they're already working. And we talk about appreciative inquiry as an excellent tool of bringing out the best in other people and bringing out the best in the relationships you have. They have one-on-one meetings with counselors, advisors. They're forced to attend office hours. And we look at these as opportunities to build good relationships, meaningful relationships that can help them down the road. They do an interview during that pitch project. Of course, there's lots of interaction with me. And so those are the kinds of evidence that we're looking for, is the relationships that they're building with other people. And I do reach out to other faculty. I reach out to the counselors and advisors to ask about how the students behaved. Was the student prepared for the meeting that they had? Did they show up on time? Did they ask meaningful questions? Working with teams. During the team project, they take on roles. There's great attention to the team dynamics, how well you influence each other, the passion that you show, managing conflict. Within Canvas, they are forced to use the discussion boards. And that's important because that way I can see what's going on and how they're interacting with each other. So when they're remote, they're using the discussion board. There are group activities that we offer throughout the semester, and an opportunity for them to practice and demonstrate their ability to manage well working with teams. We spend less time on leading organizations because that moves more into that Gandhi phase of things. So we don't spend as much time about it. We talk about it, but we don't have any exercises where they're really influencing an organization or a culture. So I just want to show you. So this is the kind of results that I get. This was mid-semester. But if you're familiar with Canvas, this is where you can see how well students are submitting things, whether submitting them on time or late. So this was handed in right about this week here where things drop off. By the way, the one assignment where you see the red, that's because I extended the deadline, but I didn't change the due date. And what you'll see is we do pretty well. We get students to be submitting their work on time. We get them to recognize the importance of taking care of themselves. So in my this was from last year, so I apologize that I haven't updated this. But we originally opened up 8 sessions, and then we had 11, and now we have 15 sections of this course. It's very popular. It's a mixture of all different kinds. We have them in person, online, 10-week, hybrid, 7-week, hybrid. We've got a 4-week. They almost always fill. I always fill with 36 students. Very few drop. They complete 3 to 4 assignments per week, which is a lot, plus these success plans, the snapshots, the presentation, team projects. So we keep them busy. None of the work is difficult. Okay, it's not a content-heavy course. This is not the same as chemistry, math, or even English, where you have to read a whole. that awesome, because of course I felt like, even though I'm a freshman, that's really, was one of our main intents here, was to force you to think like something. And learning is really very important. We're looking at the situations that they're in as situations. We're always making analogies to this at work, okay? We're always thinking that this is happening at work. So even the brochure, they're on the marketing team for that. So lots of scenarios where they can translate what they're doing into work. And so I just wanted to share with you, in case you're interested in seeing that one article that exists about this integrative leadership model. Here it is. It's called The Pebble in the Pond, How Integrative Leadership Can Bring About Transformation. And I'll stop sharing and ask if anyone has any questions. Any questions? No? It's very quiet. I don't see any questions here in chat either. Somebody did ask, what was the reading you give students? One of the first readings that we give students is something called the theory of halves. And you can Google that. I might be able to Google that myself and find it with this. Eugene.
Jocelyn, while you look for that, the course is 3 credits, correct?
Yes, it's a full 3-credit course. And by the way, one thing that we're making a change this summer. So we're going to rework the course. We're doing a course revision. And one change that we're making is we're adding, and I don't know how we're going to add because it's already jam-packed, but we're adding something about the landscape of business. And this is because it is truly a business course, and so many students don't know anything about business at all. So I started in the second year of this course started in 2017. So by 2018, I was growing concerned that I was talking to students who really had no idea what it means to even have a business, what the difference is between a business and just private people, or what business is. So I created a little quiz that counts for nothing, and it asked questions like, what do you own when you own stock? What does CEO stand for? Who does a CEO report to? So many students run to the belief, if they know what a CEO is, that a CEO reports to no one. They don't know what a stock is, what a share of stock is. They don't know what a bond is, let alone know the difference between the two. They don't understand the difference between income and wealth. I asked this question: if somebody earns $50,000 and somebody else earns $200,000 per year, who is wealthier? They don't know. And of course, the answer is you don't know. Okay, but their answer is, well, I shouldn't say that. They'll say it's the person who earns $200,000 a year. But of course, that's not wealth. I'm talking about income when I'm talking about salaries. So they don't understand that. They don't understand why you would form a corporation. So these are really the kinds of things that I believe people learn when you grow up in an environment where maybe someone in your home owns stock, where maybe your family watches some of the business news, where somebody talks about business a bit. And apparently many of our students don't have that environment in their home. And yet students who attend four-year schools directly, the students who maybe go to Temple right off the bat, I think many of them do. So we want our students to be knowledgeable about business by understanding some of the things that you learn, not in an intro to business course, because we have a course. It's the traditional intro to business course. It's the business survey course. But these kinds of things aren't covered in that course, not explicitly. So we're going to add that. Let me see if I can find that theory. It's called Calatrello's highly unscientific theory of halves. I'll write it here. And what I found is that there's always somebody in the in the class who wants to take it literally or consider it to be science, but it's not. It's written by a college professor, and it is highly unscientific. Essentially, what they're saying is, half the students won't. You can shine by coming to class, by being prepared, by paying attention, by engaging with with the material and with the faculty. Of course, there are students who do those things and still fail because some courses are genuinely difficult, and they're difficult for different people for different reasons. But for many students, I'm sure many of you feel this way. Students aren't even giving themselves a good chance of succeeding because they don't come to class, because they don't prepare, because they sit in the back and they're not paying attention. So it's a good opener for the class, and it's a good first discussion that we have is Calatrello's highly unscientific theory of halves. Any other questions? Well, we're done on time. I want to thank you for attending. It's been a pleasure. It's exciting to do this online. I'm glad that we were able to do it and that the whole conference wasn't canceled, because Faculty of the Future is an excellent conference. Thank you for being here.